Okay, so if you are ready to start playing Clawhammer Banjo but don't quite know where to start, this video is for you. In the next few minutes, I'll talk about everything you need to have and everything that you need to know before you get started playing. And I'll review what I think are currently the best budget-friendly starter banjos, and I'll also share with you the other essential gear that you need, including the specific gear that I use after having tried just about everything there is over the past couple of decades. All this information is also available in a downloadable guide that you can grab using the link in the video description. It includes all the gear that I mentioned here. And again, these are just things that I like. I don't receive any kind of commission if you purchase something. All right, so let's start with the stuff that you should have, your gears and accessories. Two things you'll definitely need to have when you start are, number one, a banjo. I hope that was obvious, and a tuner. And then things that are nice to have when you start are a strap, a banjo capo, and an instrument stand. So let's dig into each of these. First up is the banjo. Specifically, you're going to want a 5-string banjo, which has 4 long strings and a short drone string, which is the 5th string. This is the kind of banjo that's used for clawhammer, and that's in contrast with 4-string banjos, which do not have the short 5th string, and which are usually played with a flat pick. But your next question is going to be, what banjo should I get? Did you hear that? That was the sound of a giant can of worms opening. So as you might imagine, this is a topic that is filled with many diverse and strongly held opinions. That's because there are many valid options, and so there's no right answer, and there's no such thing as the best banjo. So I'll just give you my opinion that's been forged by a couple of decades of experience with the banjo and with working with a few thousand beginning players. Before I get any further into that, if you remember nothing else, the most important feature of any banjo you get is that it has been set up well and it plays easily. This is why for a beginning player, it's a great idea, if you can, to buy your banjo from someone who knows banjos and who has ensured that it has been set up properly. That's whether you're buying it in person or more likely buying it online. That's because even the most inexpensive entry-level banjo that's been set up well will sound much better and be much easier to play than the most expensive top-of-the-line banjo that has not. Now, there are two main styles of modern banjos. You have open-back banjos and resonator banjos. On an open-back banjo, the banjo is, surprise, surprise, open in the back, like this one here. That makes the open-back banjo a bit lighter than a resonator banjo, and all other things being equal, the open-back tends to give the banjo a slightly mellower tone. A resonator banjo, on the other hand, has a round wooden backplate known as the resonator attached to the back, and the main effect of the resonator is to project more of the sound forward out in front of the player, so that more of that sound makes its way into the ears of an attentive audience. All other things being equal, the resonator gives the banjo a bit more of a brighter or sharper sound. So, which one should you get for learning clawhammer? These days you'll find more clawhammer banjo players playing open-back banjos than resonator banjos. And there are several reasons for this, which are beyond the scope of this video, but the bottom line is that you can play clawhammer on either an open-back or a resonator banjo. It really does not matter. That said, open-back banjos are lighter than resonators, and all other things being equal, less expensive. Both of those are desirable features. And since the primary value of the resonator is to project the sound forward, which is most helpful for those who are playing Scruggs-style bluegrass banjo that is not clawhammer, you don't necessarily need the extra weight or expense of the resonator. However, if you already find yourself in possession of a resonator banjo, by all means play that. Now, I'll talk about some recommended starter banjos. In the under $500 category, there are two banjos out right now that are well constructed and a great option for a starter banjo if they've been properly set up. Those are the Gold Tone AC1 open back and the Recording King Dirty 30s open back. And if you want an in-depth review and comparison of those and want to hear what they sound like, as well as all the things that you can do to ensure that your first banjo sounds as good as it should, you can check out that video, which is linked in the description. So those two banjos are coming at around $300 as of today. If you're able to spend a little bit more in the $500-ish range, there are a couple of other options that will provide a modest sonic and cosmetic upgrade. Those are the Gold Tone Cripple Creek CC50 and CC100 models and the Deering Goodtime. I personally started out on a Deering Goodtime banjo. They are very well made, very easy to play and sound great and still have a special place in my heart. Once you hit the $1,500 range, you can start getting into banjos with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, including instruments made by single builders, which in my opinion are the best options once you get to that price point. Now let's talk about our second essential item, the tuner. So banjos need to be tuned before they can be played, and you should get in the habit of checking and tuning your banjo each and every time you pick it up to play it. Tuning is accomplished by tuning the tuners on the peg head to either tighten or loosen the strings, which changes their pitch or the note that we hear. And unless you have absolute pitch, which you probably know if you do, you'll need a tuner to help you tune the strings to the right notes. You can go old school and use a tuning fork or another instrument that's in tune if you want to, but these days most people use an electronic tuner. I highly recommend the clip-on style tuners, which work by picking up the vibrations of the instrument rather than vibrations in the air. Since these tuners hit the market, they've become the most popular option by quite a wide margin, I'd say. The next best option will be to download a tuner app on your smartphone. Many of those are free. Those work by detecting vibrations in the air, and so they're a bit more prone to interference from other sounds, but they're still a perfectly good option. My current favorite clip-on tuner is the Eclipse tuner by D'Addario. It's accurate, easy to use, has a nice bright screen. I used to use the D'Addario Micro headstock tuner until they recently changed the model and made it so that the on-off button is really hard to press and the screen is often hard to see, so I now would avoid that model. Note that these tuners will typically say guitar tuner. That's fine. These tuners will pick up a note on any stringed instrument. So I use the same tuner for banjo, guitar, fiddle, ukulele. It works just fine. Okay, so now let's talk about the stuff that's not essential but very nice to have. First up is the capo. So a capo is a device that allows you to change the key of a song that you're playing without having to change how you finger it. And if you have no idea what that means at this point, that's normal. You will soon, and you will then recognize what a useful thing that is. Unlike tuners, there are capos that are made specifically for banjos. And there are a few different capo designs out there. My favorite by far are the ones that were originally developed by the Page Company, in part because you can store the capo on the banjo peg head when it's not in use, right here above the nut, like this Page capo here. So this is my favorite one. Here's another one for its combination of price and value. So this is the Page capo. Next thing that's nice to have is a strap. You don't have to have a strap to play the banjo, but they do make it easier. The advantages of a strap are that the banjo will be in the same spot each time you practice. It keeps the banjo stable, and you can play when you're standing. Without a strap, you're essentially stuck playing sitting down. Now the straps attach to the banjo hooks that are around the rim, usually at around the 1 or 2 o'clock or even 3 o'clock positions, and then 7 or 8 o'clock positions. There are lots of options for straps, but I really like the design of these Neotech leather straps that clip on to these side release buckles. So these little things stay on the rim, and then you can just attach them in there like that. It makes it really easy to take it on and off, and then you don't have to try to wedge the strap in there when you're storing it in your case. And they also just feel really secure. And the strap itself is quite comfortable. Finally, the last thing is an instrument stand. I strongly recommend keeping your banjo out in a spot where you'll see it often, rather than stowed away in a case when you're not playing it. You'll end up playing it much more often if you do that. I've kept all of my banjos out on stands for nearly 2 decades and have never had an issue. Having tried virtually every kind of stand, my personal favorite are the kind where the banjo hangs from a support. They're very stable, and the design makes it super easy to grab it and play it and hang it back up. I also like these really simple, lightweight stands from StageMate, which just fold up like that. And they're super light, easy to transport around. Like tuners, stands are another item that aren't typically specific to banjos. So if it says guitar stand, typically will work for a banjo. All right, so now that we've covered the gear, let's quickly go over some stuff that you should know. So first are the parts of the banjo. So the neck is the long part of the banjo where the fretboard is located. The frets are these metal strips along the neck. Pressing a string down behind a fret is referred to as fretting, which is how you change notes. The pot is this circular body of the banjo. The head is the surface on the pot that acts like a drum, creating the banjo's distinct sound. The bridge is a small piece of wood on the head that holds the strings and transfers the vibrations of the strings to the head. The tuning pegs on the headstock are used to adjust string tension and tune the banjo. The tailpiece is where the strings are attached and anchored to the pot. As we talked about, a resonator is a backplate that's found on some banjos to project sound forward. The tone ring is a round metal hoop that sits on top of the rim on some banjos and enhances or colors the sound in certain ways. This one has a brass tone ring around it. Not every banjo will have one of these, but many of them do. And then finally there is the short fifth string, which is also known as the drone string. And that string is typically tuned to the highest pitch and usually isn't fretted when you play. So you're usually just fretting these 4 strings while the 5th string is staying at the same pitch. Now let's talk about playing techniques. So there are 2 main ways you can set the strings in motion. One is to pick downward, called down picking, also known as clawhammer or frailing. And again, it involves striking the strings with the back of your nail of your picking finger downward towards the floor. The other technique, naturally, is called up picking, also known as fingerstyle or finger picking. This involves plucking the strings upward towards you or towards the sky. And these may be referred to by the number of fingers that are used to pluck the strings, as in 2-finger banjo or 3-finger banjo. For a much more in-depth overview of banjo styles, you can check out a video that I did on that through a link in the video description. Lastly, let's go over a few other terms that you should know. So standard G tuning, or GDGBD, listed in order of the strings 5 through 1, is the most commonly used tuning for clawhammer banjo these days, certainly the most common one that people start with. Alternate tunings refer to any tuning that isn't standard G. And while there are hundreds of different tunings that people have used on the banjo, there are a handful that are most commonly used these days by clawhammer players. Double C tuning, which is GCGCD, is, along with standard G, the most commonly used tuning for clawhammer. Chords are a combination of notes that are played together. Tablature, or tabs, is a form of musical notation that's used for the banjo. So where instead of having standard music notes, tabs show which strings to play and which frets to press. Bum-diddy and bump-a-diddy describe the 2 primary rhythms of clawhammer banjo. Strumming refers to brushing across multiple strings in order to sound them all at the same time. And then picking means playing one string at a time. All right, I think that just about covers it. Again, you can grab the guide that has everything I just talked about by clicking the link in the video description. And with that, my friend, you are ready to embark on your journey to Plunktown. I hope to see you there.